I don't love the idea of a group of 5 playoff, but it might just have to happen.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Realignment, coaching carousel, the portal, all that and more. We've always got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Group of 5 playoff. Quarterbacks are in the transfer portal, and they're not coming from Ohio State. And the lawsuit that might kill the NCAA. That's all coming up on today's show. But we start with a concept that's been getting a lot of buzz recently, and that's the idea of a group of 5 playoff, which would set up a structure much like what you have at the FCS level. FCS teams play FBS teams every single year. They play teams in the group of 5, they play teams in the Power 5, but those games aren't really counted against their record in the FCS top 25 because of the talent disparity. And the FCS teams play their own national championship. They have a 24-team playoff, by the way. And when people wonder if the playoff will keep expanding, yeah, 24 is the minimum that number will eventually get to. But that's a conversation for another day. And so as the Big Ten and the SEC are pulling away, right now, that's only semi-metaphorical. It's not literal just yet. But there have been credible reports, including Josh Pate on Late Kick, talking about how the idea that the Big Ten and the SEC could just break away, leave everybody else behind, and only pull with them those whom they deem to be the most valuable television assets and brands to play for a national championship, that is a real possibility. Now, it's not set in stone. But even if that doesn't happen, let's say, and gosh almighty, I would hate if that happens. I think it would be absolutely terrible, and you would have so many schools get left behind. TCU's run to the national championship game, that would never happen in a Big Ten SEC breakaway. Like there are just so many downsides to that. But the group of 5 element, I think, is interesting because for years, they've played at the same level. They are FBS college football programs. And yet, last year's group of 5 champion of sorts, Liberty, 13-0, unbeaten in Conference USA, or even take the American Athletic Conference champion, SMU, or even take the Mountain West champion, they all went and they lost to FBS teams. Now, have we seen teams from the group of 5 compete with the highest level of college football before? Yes, we have. Cincinnati in the playoff, they beat a top 10 Notre Dame team that year. You think Boise State back in the day beating Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl with the 4th and 18 hook and ladder, one of the greatest games in the history of this wonderful sport. I've seen it happen. So don't tell me that it can't happen or that it is impossible. But the gap is continuing to widen here. I think the door swings both ways with regards to the transfer portal, but the finances, it's all going to the Power 2. Big Ten and SEC are getting 58%. The proposals for the college football playoff revenue model distribution and whatnot for the universities, not talking about with the players and such, 58% going to the Big Ten and the SEC. Under the previous arrangement, the group of 5 actually had about 22%, I think was the number in that sort of range. That's down to 9%. So they're actually getting less. So that gap is widening. And over time, if you are going to see that gap continue to widen and continue to expand, do you want to try and play for that sort of championship? Do you only want to define success at the highest level if you're a group of 5 team, if you're a conference, by saying, well, were we able to get to go on the same field as Alabama? Because I don't know that as time goes on, there are going to be group of 5 teams that could go out and win a national championship. It doesn't feel like that's the case because the gap is widening, not shrinking. So even if the sport stays together with 4 power conferences in the group of 5, I think you can make the case that a national championship for the group of 5 makes more sense. I would like for the sport to be all-inclusive and a little bit more equal, salary cap driven the way that, professional sports leagues often are. But that's not the way that college sports work, and that's not the way that college sports are going to work. Now, there are a couple hurdles with the idea of a Group of 5 playoff. Number one, you have to get the television partners who have the rights and have already paid for the rights to the Group of 5 to agree to this arrangement. That's tricky. That's tricky because that's a big overhaul. That is a massive, massive change to something that the television networks might say, I don't know, do we really need this? Is there a big, massive desire? Are you going to get 5, 6, 7, 8 million people to watch a Group of 5 national championship game? That might depend on who's playing in the national title game. That's hurdle number one. Hurdle number two, I don't think this gets talked about as much, hence why I'm bringing it up. Are fans going to see it as a national championship? Now, one day they could. But for a long time, we as college football fans saw the BCS national championship as the national title because it's what we grew up with, because it's what we knew. But do you think winning that first national title felt the exact same as when 15 years later, Alabama started rolling them up or started rolling them off? What's the phrase I'm looking for? I don't know. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Racking them up. That's a better way to put it. No, it didn't, because when something is new, it doesn't have the same ingrained level of support, urgency, desire, or understanding of its meaning. And, there's been a national championship my entire life, so it's made sense, but that wasn't always the case. And so it might have felt strange to some. Now, that's not an exact one-to-one comparison because you were actually getting a process that was clarifying the national champion, not saying, hey, there's another form of a championship that you can win over here. I liken it to, well, let's use Live Golf as an example, but really you could just look at the PGA Tour. Everybody knows that the majors are great. And if you're a casual golf fan, you know that the majors are really good. But when a player goes on the PGA Tour and wins at, say, Bay Hill, which is a really famous tour, PGA Tour event for those of you that know and understand golf, such as myself. When a player wins that, I know that that's a big deal. But do casual golf fans know? Probably not. They just like, what does that mean? So if you just create a national championship amongst the Group of 5, over time, sure, it could get more exciting. It could get more interesting. It could have more legitimacy and get more attendance and coverage and all that sort of stuff. But at the start, I think you would face some pushback to, that's not the real national championship. It would feel more like the NIT than the NCAA tournament. And if you look at college basketball, you have the NCAA tournament, you have the NIT, you have the CBI. Could you create a 3-tiered structure in college football? You could. You could. Now, not necessarily with the FCS schools included here, but a thought that I had on this front that I think would make it enticing is say, hey, if you're a national champion, you are a team that gets to bump up to a level, right? And introduce a national conference relegation structure that I think could do a lot of good for college football. Now, I've discussed it before because it's been floated as an idea for, a Pac-12 Mountain West merger where you'd have 14 schools, you could have 7 in one division, 7 in the other, top team and the bottom team swap every year. Look, if you could get networks and conferences to go for that, I'd be here for it. But again, that's a difficult proposition to say that some FBS school would accept G5 relegation if they finish in last place. How do you determine that? Well, if you had separate conferences, that would of course be tricky, but some sort of incentive to play at the highest level of college football where the Group of 5 teams just can't really get to is how you would add the most immediate urgency, I think, to that national championship game that you just create. Because if you just make it and the Group of 5 teams just play in it, it'll feel like an exhibition, at least for a while. Maybe over time it'd be able to change, but I think the Group of 5 playoff concept is interesting. I just think there are a number of hurdles, and I'd say more likely than not, it doesn't come to fruition. I do think, though, that as the gap begins to widen, it will get more discussion. And there are serious conversations that are taking place that could put that into existence. Drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments below as always. Players are hitting the transfer portal. That's no surprise. There is something that's kind of new in the transfer portal right now. Quarterbacks. What's not new is how great Game Time is, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60% on last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you want. The lowest price guarantee is what Game Time provides, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and in the NHL. Baseball is in full swing. My Mariners won yesterday in walk-off fashion, so that puts me in a really good mood as I'm recording this show. And you'll be in a good mood if your bet hits at FanDuel. And guess what? FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 whether you win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So, what are you waiting for? I don't know either. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and our official sportsbook sponsor here at the Locked On Network. Do you know the name Sam Howard? He was once a 5-star recruit to the University of Washington. If I told you and you didn't know anything about him other than he was once a 5-star recruit, he's a left-handed quarterback, for whatever that's worth. Some people are more interested in that than others. Washington recently had success with a left-handed quarterback. So anyway, I digress. If I just told you he was a 5-star quarterback, he was playing at Washington, and he transferred out, where do you think he played football last year? The answer is Cal Poly, which is an FCS football program. So when Sam Heward put his name back into the transfer portal to find a new home, I had two thoughts. Number one, don't think I've ever seen this from a 5-star quarterback recruit before. And he had a fine year, 18 touchdowns against 10 interceptions, though, at Cal Poly. And when you do that sort of digging and think about his career trajectory, my second thought was, I don't think this is a Power 5 starter. You just should not get caught up in the stars here. Look, stars matter. I am of the stars matter crowd. You go look at the recruiting profiles of teams across the country and the number of NFL players that turns into and who the best programs are and how they recruit. Stars absolutely matter. Stars, however, are not everything. So when you look at Sam Heward, I don't think he's someone that's capable of being a Power 4 starter in college football. I don't. Could he go start at the group of 5? Probably. There are a number of different programs that would be able to benefit from having him in that room. But that 5-star potential, look, the scouting community, it is a hard place to be. You cannot go 100%, and I don't think that was an accurate assessment given how his career has gone to this point. Doesn't mean he couldn't go start somewhere and make an impact for your team if you're a group of 5 school listening to or watching the show, which I thank you for doing, by the way. I'm a big fan of the G5, as you could tell from the first segment of today's show. But I don't think that Sam Heward is someone who is going to suddenly find a home and then pop and maximize his 5-star potential. I think he's someone who can go start in G5 somewhere, maybe help a team contend for a conference championship. But he is not the only former Washington quarterback who's in the transfer portal.
4-star quarterback DeMarcius Davis is in the transfer portal. This is the second time he's entered the transfer portal this offseason after originally deciding to do so after his original coach, Kalen DeBoer, decided to depart for Alabama, but he returned to Washington to give Jedd Fisch a shot during spring practice and appears to be the third quarterback on the depth chart behind another true freshman that was an early enrollee in quarterback Damon Williams, who has looked a lot more advanced this offseason. And Davis is a really, really promising player with tons of upside. He's got a really big arm, and as his frame continues to fill out, he looks like somebody who could be a really, really nice dual threat at the college level, but he just doesn't look as advanced as Damon Williams did through a whole bunch of spring practices, and looks like he's going to be a great get wherever he ends up.
6'5", 190 pounds. What class do you think Davis was in? 2024. Now, I'm curious to see where he winds up because the talent is, of course, there. There is nothing proven about Davis at quarterback. Absolutely nothing for the former Husky. Shout out to my guy Roman Tomashoff of Locked On Huskies for the blurb right there. But there's so much to be learned about him as a quarterback recruit. He needs to go somewhere, not where he can start right away as a true freshman. That's not the expectation. That's not the need. Go find a veteran quarterback. Go find someone to sit behind. Go find an offensive coach. Go find a quarterback-friendly system. Someone who can develop you for a full year. That's where DeMarcius Davis is able, I think, to succeed if he's able to go somewhere in which, frankly, a situation similar to Washington's. It sounded like he just got beat out on the depth chart, didn't want to be the third guy. And he provides another example of a really fascinating trend. And that trend is guys commit in the class of 2024, and then they go through spring ball. One spring ball. Not one practice, but one set of spring practices. And they don't like where they land on the depth chart and transfer out. Now, the transfer portal closes later today. I don't remember the exact time, but Tuesday, April 30th is the last day players can enter the portal. Remember, players can exit the portal at any time they would like, which is why when you hear the academic calendar argument brought up for why the calendar in college football has to be this way, it's all a bunch of nonsense. It is speaking gibberish. I will not hear said arguments. Thank you for raising them anyway, hypothetical YouTube commenter. So I think that Davis has got some options and he's got plenty of talent. And I just am bewildered by the number of guys we see entering the portal after a spring, not a season. Okay, it's one thing if you go through a season and then maybe a transfer comes in, but you go through one spring ball and you decide, no, this isn't for me. Now, Davis, I believe, committed before Jed Fish had taken over, and so he was kind of waiting to see what he was going to do. He committed on December 20th, 2023, so Kalen DeBoer was still there, and then he entered the portal, and then he withdrew in January, and Jed Fish took over, but now he's going back into the portal. It's just strange. It's just strange. It is becoming a more and more common occurrence. There is a safety from Alabama, for instance, who has done this. 4-star recruit in the class of 2023. He's in the transfer portal now, reportedly tied to a West Coast. Peyton Woodyard is the player that I'm talking about there. So it's just the world. Like, why not add another change, wrinkle, new element to it? So here's another quarterback name who I've mentioned before here on the show. Do you know Jakari Brown from Miami? He's going to UCF, not the only Hurricane going to be a Golden Knight.
Jakari Brown has entered the transfer portal. I am Alex Dono from Locked On Canes. Former Miami Hurricanes quarterback Jakari Brown is now in the portal with 3 years of eligibility remaining. This is a player, I'm sorry for Miami to lose him. Of course, was not going to be the starting quarterback this season with Cam Ward now in South Florida, but Brown is someone who has very high upside and has continued to develop since arriving at Miami since 2022. Had a really good spring game this past weekend, really flashed there. Brown is already a tremendous runner from the quarterback position. He's big and strong at 6'4", around 230 pounds, has great instincts as a runner, and he's got a strong arm as a passer. He's been developing more consistency with his deep throws. Not a finished product yet, but telling you, with 3 years of eligibility remaining, Jakari Brown's next team is getting a player with very high potential as a future starter in college football.
And what did I just say about great places for young quarterbacks to go? Find an offensive coach with a veteran quarterback to learn behind. He's going to UCF. UCF. Yeah, the Golden Knights have, wait for it, veteran offensive coach Gus Malzahn, veteran quarterback KJ Jefferson. Yeah, don't forget about that as they go into their second year in the Big 12. UCF is making some moves. They're not even done making moves. They added Nigel Kelly, who's also a transfer on the edge at the defensive line position from Miami. They have been reportedly tied to Penny Boone, who is coming into the transfer portal from West Virginia. 24/7 Sports has got him as the top-rated running back in the portal available right now. Not necessarily in this entire cycle. There have been several guys who they'd rate ahead of him, but the top halfback in the portal, looking at the Golden Knights, Gus Malzahn and company, they are making some real moves, and I would watch for him in the Big 12. I would. I've always liked Gus Malzahn as a head coach. Did not think he was treated right at Auburn. I think KJ Jefferson is solid. And you look at what Gus Malzahn's building for the future. Jakari Brown could be the guy. Nigel Lee Kelly in there. If they add Penny Boone, oh boy, look out for the Golden Knights. Just don't sleep on them, okay? They were the only new Big 12 team last year to make a bowl game. And they look like they could be at least as good, if not a little bit better than what they were a season ago. The NCAA cannot say the same thing about being in a position of strength right now. All right, game off. We got to pause here, talk about more Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. Spencer, you already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in the game, folks. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, massive, just everything. They got everything over there. All sorts of prizes and games, massive multipliers for everything you win or rent, frenzies. There's always something to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench, go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. So the NCAA has a problem. It's called House v. NCAA, and it does not appear to be trending in the right direction for the NCAA. They could be due about, $4 billion in past payments due to college athletes who were not getting a share of the revenue model for previous media rights deals and the television money that came in when players weren't allowed to get paid and everything. That's of course been blown up, not just with NIL, but the latest from Ross Dellinger is that there are, and several other reporters, Dennis Dodd as well, have reported that there are ongoing active conversations about a player compensation model. And that model would give players a piece of the pie for these big, massive television deals that go to the conferences and go to the schools, and then the money trickles down and it goes into the circle of college athletics and funds all sorts of coaches' salaries and equipment and facilities and whatnot. Now, here's the tricky part with this. It sounds great at the outset to say, well, there's so much money in these deals. They've got to be able to pay the players. Don't think that this isn't going to come with consequences. Now, that does not mean that this is all bad news, as I'll get to in just a moment. But the estimations, according to reports, for what each athletic department that's a part of one of these deals, like in the SEC or the Big Ten, has to pay players is in the $15 to $20 million range. Now, there are certain programs, I'll say, in which $15 to $20 million is attainable. Most places cannot just pony up that sort of cash, and there are going to be cuts somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know who, because anytime you have a financial cut, there's a person on the other side of it. And I'm not saying the money can't be recouped. I'm just saying that $15 to $20 million that you have to suddenly give to your student athletes as a part of their total compensation package with their scholarship deal to play football or whatever sport you're playing at the school, that's not a small amount of money. Okay, if it were like $2 to $3 million total, okay, that's chump change. $15 to $20 million, that's real money. That's real money, and there are places that I don't know. I hope they don't end up cutting any sports or have to reduce salaries or cut back on facility or anything like that. I hope they're able to come up with the money. I don't know if everybody's going to. Now, that's just a reported amount. This has not all actually come to fruition at this time, but what could come of this that is good is the reports again indicate that there is a player compensation model being discussed in which student athletes are still going to be student athletes. They're just going to also get paid because they are, the product essentially that is drawing eyeballs to televisions, that is driving these massive media rights deals. And so if that is the case, but they're not made full-time or just employees, I think that is the best model for all involved. And you can rant from now until the end of time about it's professional sports. It's the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. It's not the same. Still, the overwhelming majority of kids that are playing major college football are done with football once they graduate. They are done with that. And so I think removing that is a mistake on that side of things. I think removing it is also a mistake because of what you actually have in professional sports, which is an ability to cut players. Okay, when Deion Sanders came into the worst college football team in the last 5 years and told everyone, there was a story that ran in The Athletic recently, kind of following up with players and where they went after Deion basically came in and told them to get out. Okay, a lot of people didn't like that. Now, I was okay with it at Colorado because they were so bad, they needed a massive change. And guess what? They were a much better team in 2023 than they were in 2022. But on the whole, is it beneficial for these kids whose primary objective, or for a lot of them, their primary way to go to college at all is to play football or another sport? Are we helping them by just treating them as employees? Again, not saying they can't get paid. There appear to be a lot of discussions going on about how to make that happen. Not trying to push back on that here, because I see the logical connection there. But if you can get to a model, which is what they're reportedly trying to go towards, in which they're still student athletes, but they're just compensated, I think that's the best for all involved. Because if you go full professionalization, I think there are a lot of consequences that come from that are not any good. So the NCAA is just in a bad spot legally. They've lost in the court a couple times, whether that was the USC case or the Tennessee case, but this House versus NCAA, that's the name of the case to know. House v. NCAA, that's the one that could quite literally bring the NCAA down, because if they're found liable and have to pay, thousands and thousands of past athletes over $4 billion, well, they're not going to be able to survive. And here's the problem. I don't know this for sure because I'm not entirely certain as to how all the legal mechanisms would work. But if the NCAA were to say disappear, you know what that kind of creates? A power vacuum. Who's going to fill that? Yeah, that'd be the Big Ten and the SEC, who are already pulling away financially, who are already pulling away on the field, and with the structure of the playoff and everything, it's all slanted towards those two. Do you think that's going to accelerate or decelerate or stay the same if the NCAA ceases to exist? My guess is it accelerates. Now, legally speaking, do they have that authority? I don't know. We'll see. But the NCAA also hasn't governed college football for quite a long time. But if they suddenly weren't involved with the governing of all the other sports, Big Ten and SEC might look around and say, well, it's easier to run, sports amongst these teams and not have to be responsible for everybody else. So I think you could have some more dire consequences there, and hopefully it goes in the best direction it can. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.